Corpus Christi, the original Polish title Boże Ciało, is out in cinemas now. The latest film directed by Jan Komasa, starring Bartosz Bielenia. A film seemingly about faith and religion, but in reality about people first and foremost. So the main character is a young man named Daniel, who at the beginning of the film is locked up in a youth detention center. He hangs around the local priest that comes over to perform mass for the inmates, and Daniel is interested in going to a seminary school himself after he's out. But he is told right off the bat that due to his criminal record, that will not be possible. He is then released and goes across Poland to work as a carpenter at a company that hires the released inmates. And when he reaches the small town that is his destination, at the very last moment, he instead goes to the local church and in a kind of joking way, manages to convince a girl he meets there that he's actually a priest. He then rapidly gets introduced to the actual, real local priest, and before he can get the courage to clear up the misunderstanding that stems from his bullshitting, he gets roped further and further into the church life, eventually taking over the community as the old priest leaves temporarily due to health issues. And as Daniel is trying to maintain the fake priest persona without being discovered, and also genuinely make a difference and be a positive force in the community, he's also beginning to discover more and more about a tragedy that befell the town just a few months prior. So, based on this description, it may seem like a heartwarming tale about an idealistic young man that improves the community through the power of belief. It's not. It's a film that takes a long, hard look at how people treat religion in their lives. How some, like Daniel, are extremely flawed on the surface, extremely complicated, very human, occasionally even hedonist. They make mistakes, but they do have genuine decency somewhere in them that allows them to do the right thing more often than not. And on the other hand, other people who seem to be devout Catholics and act like they're holier than the Pope, but underneath, they're full of rage and hate, and their entire being basically contradicts what they're trying to preach. I think it's not so much about the religion itself, but how religion is this front that people would like to hide behind. Daniel hides behind the structures of the church to avoid his past, while other people in town hide behind this faux faith to excuse and justify their shitty views and behavior. There is a character in the film named Lydia. She's a sort of caretaker / administrator for the local church, and she's just so absolutely infuriating and disgusting as a human being. She pretends to be this pillar of community, and in reality, she's more hung up on going through the motions of religion than actually living its message. Credit where it's due, Aleksandra Konieczna plays the role absolutely perfectly. You just can't help but hate and despise the character. She made me think of Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter. Like them, she's terrible in every way, but the worst part is that she's not this unimaginable demon villain. She's someone that many of us have met, a mostly regular person that's just petty and hateful because they can, because they have this small amount of power over other people. And kind of related to her character, but in general, one of the biggest themes and things about the film for me was the examination of those church rituals as really hollow and meaningless at the end of the day for a lot of the people that partake in them. All the dressing up for church, the religious songs, the mass, the confessions, it's something that I grew up with as a Catholic, and at some point got increasingly disillusioned and skeptical about the weight of it all. But now watching it as an atheist who has been outside of church for a good couple of years now, it is just so creepy to see the cult rituals that once seemed completely normal because, of course, I grew up with it and were indoctrinated with it, let's not fear the word, and now are completely outlandish when you look at them from the outside with a cold eye. Having said that, I think that the movie shows a remarkable amount of restraint in regards to the things it criticizes. It doesn't just go all out on religion as a whole, but rather on how people pervert it, taking the facade and pretending to live religiously, but in reality being massive hypocrites. As I said in the beginning, it is primarily a criticism of people and not church itself, even though it does, of course, touch on church as well. In this way, I think it's a great companion piece to last year's Claire, another Polish film, which is seemingly also mainly about church, but that one told stories of several actual priests who, actual not in as in real people, but who were actual priests, not like Daniel pretending to be a priest in this film. So several priests at various levels of the church career ladder, and in my opinion, that was also mainly about the human flaws in people who just so happened to be part of church in that story. But where Claire looked at the sort of inside people in the organization, the clergy, Corpus Christi is more concerned with the community itself. In terms of tone, it is truly harrowing. There are moments of hope and joy and humor, but the bulk of the story is so jaded and sad and depressing. It's the film is not afraid to venture really deep and show us the absolute worst that can be found in people. It's visceral and brutal, emotionally speaking. It's acted out and shot in a fantastic way. Especially the cinematography part was a nice change in Polish cinema, because I think most of the Polish films look rather bland, and only occasionally you have this hidden gem, which this one is. I also like the writing, the screenplay. There's one scene in particular which really made me admire the film as a whole, where Daniel is out with a couple of young people from town. They're drinking beers, they're having a barbecue, and they're arguing. And the dialogue between them is perhaps the most natural I've heard in such a scene ever. It's filled with nonsensical profanity to the point that it's not very pleasant to hear. It's not smooth and artificially written. It's just the way young people would talk in this situation. I felt as if I was there with them, because I have heard many such conversations in my life. There's only one thing that I didn't like about the film, and it's the ending. It's an open ending, which in itself is not a problem for me. I tend to enjoy those. But the moment it cuts to black feels kind of weird. I thought that the film was either 5 minutes too short or 5 minutes too long. You could cut the very last scenes out and have a perhaps more powerful, more dramatic, and still open ending. Or you could show a tiny bit more to give us just more closure in regards to the characters. But as it is, it's stuck somewhere in between the two, and it's just not as smooth and elegant as the rest of the film before it. Even so, with this slight disappointment towards the end, I think that Corpus Christi was phenomenal. Certainly one of the best movies of the year for me so far. Would it hit as hard for someone not as familiar with the prevalent Catholic culture when they're not able to relate to it so much? I honestly don't know. I hope it still would, but in any case, for me, it worked exceptionally well.